Welcome to the Together for Education in Ames podcast, where we have meaningful conversations on the state of our local school districts. Schools should be a place of hope for children, where we can come and learn without fear of being judged or labeled. We advocate for unity in our student population and excellence in education. I'm Kira Werstein, your host. Hosting with me today is Heather Nunnekanoven. In today's episode, we're going to discuss educational opportunities and options for families in Central Iowa and in Ames specifically. There's recent legislation that has passed that actually will affect and provide more options and choices for families, so you want to stay tuned to hear about that. So again, my name is Kira Werstein. I'm a college teaching professor and mother of 3 children in the Ames School District.
Thanks, Kira, for having me. I am an Ames resident. I have a daughter who we currently homeschool, was previously in Sawyer and Ames, and I am the wife of a Gilbert public school teacher for many years, and I'm just really concerned about the education offered to public school students in Ames, and sometimes people call me the information lady, and I feel like I have a lot of information that might be of help to you if you're trying to decide what would be a good alternative for your child if you've decided that it's no longer the Ames Public School District or one of the surrounding ones.
Yeah, awesome. So I agree that choices are great for people because they can, well, it sounds like what you're saying is they can find the best fit for their family. So we know that the Ames Public School is an option locally. If you live in the Ames district, there's actually some of our surrounding smaller districts that are closing open enrollment because they're so full. So you'd actually have to move in order to go to school in some of those surrounding schools. What are some options for families that are within the Ames boundaries?
With Governor Reynolds and the legislature working really diligently to expand educational opportunities in Iowa, there's lots of words that get thrown around. So we're going to do our best today, or I'm going to do my best to demystify that. And the options that you currently have in Iowa are public schooling, open enrollment, a private school like St. Cecilia's or Ames Christian here in Ames, a charter school if you can find one, homeschooling. There is also dual enrollment, but that's not actually an educational choice. That is combining the benefit of any other option with public schooling.
Okay, so just to clarify, when you said dual enrolling, that is you do a percentage of time for your student in the Ames Public School District, and then you combine that with either homeschooling or
any other option that's available.
Okay.
You could do an online public school. You could independent private instruction. You could be an Ames Christian and dual enrolled. Any of the educational options in Iowa, except what we're going to call HILSTA 1 and HILSTA 2, give you the option to dual enroll in the public school district where you reside.
Okay, so let's visit that in just a second, just so I get my full understanding of the dual enrollment options. Another one of those with dual enrollment is Ames does have a homeschool assistance program. Mm-hmm. Do you know much about that program?
Yes. Would it be okay to maybe just talk about the 5 options for homeschooling so parents
totally,
know
because that would be a part. Yeah,
5?
Definitely. Let's do that.
So we talked about the different school choice options. Within homeschooling, Iowa offers 5 options. The Iowa Department of Education refers to those as CPI 1, CPI 2, and IPI. However, the Homeschool Legal Defense Association has a really great breakdown that I find so much easier to understand, and I'm going to use those terminology, those 1 through 5. I've got a document here that Kira can put out to give far more details than we can give in this podcast, but we're just going to try and highlight some of those. So real quickly, HILSTA 1 is independent private instruction. HILSTA 2 is competent private instruction by opt-out. Due to some changes in the legislature, it doesn't actually exist as an option anymore, but it is still in the list. HILSTA 3 would be competent private instruction with an annual assessment. HILSTA 4 is competent private instruction under a supervising teacher, and distilled to 5 is the option that Kara mentioned, competent private instruction with a homeschool assistance program. That is going to be most likely to be able to be very similar to a public school, but within your home and with access to a certified supervising teacher assigned by the school district that's paid by the school district. Under that option, the school district can increase the requirements beyond the state minimums to anything they choose. Currently, for example, in Ames, or in Iowa, there is a requirement to have 8 contacts with a supervising teacher during the school year, 2 in every quarter, 1 in person, and 1 that can be in person or often as a phone call or Zoom or something. But Ames has decided that they want 16 contacts a year. And if you cannot agree to that, then you can't be part of their homeschool assistance program. The public school district where you reside or which you are open enrolled to can choose to set those requirements and change those requirements at any time. So for instance, for this year, that was their requirement. For next year, it could be different.
Now, when you said competent private instructor, there was the word competent was with a number of those. What defines that? What makes an instructor competent?
So a parent or guardian qualifies as a competent private instructor.
They don't need a teaching license.
Do not need a teaching license. Don't need, they are not even required to have a high school diploma themselves. There are no requirements. You qualify by being a parent or guardian, legal guardian of the child. For your own children. Under CPI in Iowa, you can also provide supervision to up to 4 unrelated students as long as you are not charging for that instruction. Ultimately, the parents are going to supervise homework at home, but maybe there's some classes or some families that trade back and forth of, I do the teaching on Mondays and you do the teaching on Tuesdays. And we all supervise homework at home like we did in the public school. But you could have a group of up to 4 or 5 students that provides that if that was something that works. Or I do it all this week and next week is your family's turn. There are so many ways to do homeschool. I have heard more ways that have been successful, like with veteran homeschoolers. It's amazing how creative people can be. I have a close friend who, she and another family have known each other for many years. They come to one of the houses. They show up, I believe it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I think they have 6 kids each currently of school age. And at 9 o'clock in the morning, they start. They have split up. One mom teaches these subjects, another mom teaches the other. And at 10:45, she pulls out of her driveway. Monday through Thursday, they have Fridays off. You go home, the kids know exactly what they need to do. They're completely capable of doing any of the independent work that's been assigned to them. And the moms don't spend any prep work outside of that time. It really works for them. Like, if you can dream it, it's possible. But what I think would be helpful is if we can help people to understand what are the minimum requirements. You need to know that for options 2 through 5, it's required 148 days. But if you think about it, in the public school, you've been going to school at least 180 days, depending on the district. That's like gaining a whole month of your life back. If your family goes to homeschooling, you have all this time. Our particular family, I'm a tax preparer, so in March, we don't do any schooling at all. I can't handle homeschooling and tax preparation. So I use those days, I've calendared it out. So we're going to hit more than 148 that's required, but we get to take the whole month of March off. So other families do a few days a week and they school year round. Some families do 4 days a week. Some families do large gaps and then chunks of time. It's 148 days, 37 and a quarter. But competent private instruction, going back to your original question, no requirement if you're the parent or the legal guardian of the child. Otherwise, you can be a certified teacher that supervises. Under CPI, you can charge for your services. So there may be certified teachers who want to offer that service to other families who, for whatever reason, need to work and trust the schooling of their children to someone else who's a supervised teacher. The homeschool legal the Homeschool Assistance Program has supervising teachers that are paid by the school district. So there's no cost to you. One of the things I wondered if we could talk about is that cost just really doesn't have to be a barrier. I was surprised just how inexpensive it has become. You can spend absolutely nothing and be a part of like the Homeschool Assistance Program. They have an entire resource library. You can check out the curriculum that's used in the public school. They have all the math manipulatives and microscopes and chemistry beakers and everything you could ever need. Anything that a classroom teacher has access to, you have access to in that library.
And that's in the Homeschool Assistance Program.
That's option 5.
Okay.
And you're going to submit yourself to some requirements, doing whatever they say you need to do to qualify. But by doing so, you don't have to spend any money. You don't have to choose your own math curriculum. You don't have to buy anything. You can operate very similarly to a public school. I have a close neighbor who is one of the teachers in that program, and she is wonderfully working with families who do homeschooling in very diverse ways. And she's not there to tell you how to teach, like make it like a public school. She says it's a joy to get to help them, like empower them to do school as it's their conviction to do it. I mean, we have families of all different religions, all different cultures and backgrounds, social and economic statuses, and they're all empowered to do schooling, and they don't have to spend money to do it. There is some really expensive curriculum out there, and you can spend lots and lots of hours, but it's possible that the people we're talking to today, Kira, don't have tons of time. And the people that haven't yet removed their kids from the district, they're both working full time, or they're a single parent and trying to figure out, I don't really have time to have another full-time job of schooling my kid or kids. I've been floored at how simple it has been, or that it can be. I've found some great resources to make it just super simple and yet really fruitful. I have been
yourself
amazed.
As a parent who's homeschooling your child now.
Yes.
And how long have you been doing that?
So this is our second year. We just did, today was day 100 for us for the second year. And we started, and it was the scariest thing I've ever done. I feel like I've taken a lot of risks in my life, but I have never been so scared to have the responsibility of schooling my child. Like education's a big deal.
Yeah.
And then my husband's the teacher. He's the almost 20-year public educator. Like, that's not me. I've never taught anything ever. But he works, and I'm home, and I work nearly full time with tax preparation, but I was the one who would carve out time to do this. So I can understand if anybody listening is like, nah, that's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of curriculum just given to me, and it was free, and we hadn't really set aside a lot of money to start. So I just dove in, and it was the most frustrating thing. It gave me flashbacks to when my mom homeschooled. So I have 9 brothers and sisters, different marriages. We've all had different schooling journeys, and my mom was committed to the right educational choice for for each child for each quarter. And so I had siblings who were in and out of public school and private school and homeschool, but I remember my mom spending 10, 20 hours when she had a child she was homeschooling outside of the instruction time. She would spend late nights and weekends planning and prepping and grading papers and looking for resources, and it was exhausting. And I thought that's what I was getting myself into, but we were so committed that during COVID, I needed my daughter in elementary school to learn something more than how to keep her mask on. That her education is important to me, and so I'm going to figure out how to make sacrifices to make this happen.
Yeah.
So we started with this like piecemealed curriculum and stuff all over the place, and she was frustrated, and I was spending a lot of time, and teaching isn't my thing, and I stumbled onto this curriculum called The Good and the Beautiful, and it is a combination of like Charlotte Mason and classical Christian education, or just classical education. It's not denomination based. It does have a Christian worldview, so it's going to encourage morality and good character. But it's just that it's absolutely beautiful curriculum, and they gave away their core curriculums for free. language arts and reading, and math. And that is what became our core curriculum. But they gave you the PDF for free.
Wow.
Not a sample.
Yeah.
What you needed to do the entire year. And to this day, K-5, you can download it for free. Then when I went to a printer, because it was so beautiful with giving appreciation for artwork and poetry, I was just floored. And the thing that hit me about not being a teacher is it told me every word to say. There was no prep, no lesson planning, no figuring out how to teach something. It literally told me every word, and it was so simple. It wasn't long. It was like 10 or 15-minute lessons, broken down. And I went to take this curriculum to a printer, and I was like, it's going to cost me $4 more just to pay the curriculum publisher to send me a nice spiral-bound, printed. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
It was not expensive at all. I think I spent, I looked it up this year. I should have looked up my order confirmation, but it was like $65. And their math curriculum's $50. So that became like our core curriculum. And then later we added their history curriculum, which we use for social studies. And we haven't used their science curriculum. I have friends who do and love it. It's just more money than we want to spend. And in Iowa, for K through 5th grade, you are required only to teach language arts, reading, math, social studies, and science. Social studies is defined by the Iowa Department of Education now as also 21st century skills. And so that is a very broad topic. Our homeschool, we just base around this good and beautiful curriculum. It's a couple books that she can know we're going to use during the day. And it just simplified everything. Now, I will say it took me a little bit of time to kind of figure out a routine, but now we sit down at the table at 8:30, and at 10 o'clock, we're done, and I go up to work in my office. And so we get through things together, and then she has independent work that she'll work on for 30 to 45 minutes during the day. She takes a big break and then comes back and does her independent work, and she's done. My kid has gotten back the privilege to be a child.
Yeah.
To be creative, to play, to be with friends. When we were in the public school, it was like the school controlled our lives. Like, my kid is exhausted. Oh. And I don't like them deciding what time she gets up in the morning and what time she has to go to bed so she has a full night's sleep. I want to decide that.
Yeah.
But by giving my child to a public school, I'm agreeing to do it their way. And I love the fact that she's able to just play and be creative and be a kid, which allows her to flourish in school. And there's plenty of socialization things that we still have yet to figure out. But as far as the school portion of it itself, it has worked well.
Yeah. It's
not required a ton of time. It doesn't require a ton of money. We spend less than $200 a year for brand new curriculum. You could spend even less if you just got the free PDFs, but they're so pretty.
Yeah.
So I just spent the money on the PDFs. But
so what I am hearing in all of these options so far are both that there are many options that are, and you've got resources. We're going to share those on our website and have the links available for that. But also what I noted so far is how you just came to life when you're sharing how you have been able to find this option for your daughter and for your family that is flexible, affordable, effective with her academics, and enjoyable. And what it sounds like, and what we're trying to achieve in this episode, is finding an educational opportunity for your family, for your child, that is going to be a good fit for all of those things. And so for some, it may be public school. For some, it may be homeschool. And we've gone through a number of different ways to do homeschool. And there are more, even locally here in Ames. You mentioned private schools as one. So we've got St. Cecilia's, and the grades for that are preschool through 5th. I actually just saw an article in the Ames Tribune that they are looking at enrollment request, and they may be opening up a 6th grade. at St. Cecilia's. Ames Christian, just looked on their website today actually, and they are preschool through 6 right now. And they are considering opening up a 7th and 8th is what I have recently learned about Ames Christian. So those are a couple other options to keep on the radar. Now, a couple of options that we haven't talked about yet are what has gone through, like we said, with recent legislation. This was in May, a charter school bill just passed. It is House File 813, if you want to do some more reading about that. And Kim Reynolds was quoted in an article that right after this was published, or right after this bill was passed, this historic legislation will bolster Iowa's public education system by helping meet the needs of many by meeting the varying needs of Iowa's K-12 students. And so, again, this is just another option for families because what Governor Reynolds argued was that not all kids are the same, and certainly not all circumstances that they face will require the same solutions, the same education. And so for some families, charter schools can provide an innovative alternative learning model that motivates students to succeed. It allows greater flexibility for districts and for schools to focus on closing gaps in student opportunity and achievement for all students from preschool through post-secondary. Now, with charter schools in Iowa, the previous law, and Heather, correct me if I'm wrong here, my understanding is that Iowa's original charter school law only allowed schools to obtain the charter school licensure if they got approval and oversight from the local school district board. So, for example, if in Ames, if there was someone or that wanted to open up a charter school, they would have to first get permission from the Ames school board. And this bill, what has changed with that is charter schools can now open and operate within the boundaries of the public school district without approval of the board. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. I would just take it one step further and say instead of submitting the application to the local school board, we now have a procedure for submitting applications directly to the Iowa Board of Education, and the Iowa Board of Education makes the decision. It's no longer the local school board making the decision. And of course, charter schools are funded with public funding, and there's no cost to families to enroll their children there. Which means that the public funding leaves the regular school district and would move to a charter school if a child was enrolled there. So the public school district they're not real interested in losing dollars or in competition to improve their services.
Yeah. And so correct me if I'm wrong now, but charter schools could be open previously with the approval of the board, but it wasn't. This voucher system is a new concept being proposed currently. And so in Governor Reynolds' condition of the state address in early January, she discussed this concept that evidently the legislatures are working on drafting up a bill related to the per pupil dollar amount that is directed to the public schools based on how many students go there. And what her proposal explained is that it will use this state money to help families pay for private school. They could use the money for charter schools. They could use it for tutors. They could use it for educational materials. They could use it for online schooling, is my understanding of this, if this would then pass. That said, this article specifically that quoted Governor Reynolds in this address said that the state currently allocates $7,629 per student in a given school year to the public school. And so qualifying families, this isn't all families, and I'll get to more details there, but they could pull their child out of public schools. They would then receive a voucher of 70% of that, which is $5,359 of that student's state educational funding, and then they could take that somewhere else towards, like we said, charter schools, private schools, other learning therapies, tutors, and textbooks is what it said. Now, where does that other 30% go? So that's $2,270 would go back to the public school system, not necessarily the one in the district that they live in, but in the condition of the state address, Governor Reynolds actually said it would go to smaller school districts across the state. I don't know how familiar you are with this. Smaller was not defined anywhere that I could find. So what is a smaller school district? I don't know where that threshold is. Are you aware of?
I don't know.
So
where the
probably
threshold
more
is.
information to come as I write this bill up. And so what is argued with this, my understanding, is that students are unique. Children, families have unique interests. They have unique aptitudes and unique values. And this gives the diverse needs of children and families the opportunity to start treating those individuals as individuals and make sure that they get the education that works best for them. Now, the limits, like I said, what was discussed in the condition of the state address is that not all families would qualify for this. There's a limit with, as far as the voucher goes, 4 times the poverty level. And so this means that a family of 4 could not make more than $106,000 a year in order to be eligible for this. In order to be eligible to transfer their voucher, so to speak. So now,
clarify a little
yeah,
bit
go
about
ahead,
that?
please.
So the governor, the legislature is working at this challenge from lots of different angles. They've already changed the charter school law to make it possible or more likely for charter schools to open and to flourish in Iowa. Previously, it was next to impossible for that to happen. There's only a couple of them, but I would anticipate there are far more that are going to open. Having the vouchers available is another avenue. It's not necessary for the voucher program to pass or be approved for there to be lots of other opportunities or for even funding for a charter school. There's already a mechanism for those dollars to move from the public district to the charter school without a voucher program.
Okay.
But what vouchers would open up, let's say you wanted to homeschool your child using a rather expensive curriculum that you've just decided is the best. Mm-hmm. Or there was an online school option that you really wanted to do, but it was more than your family could afford. Mm-hmm. That's what school vouchers are going to give you the option to do. Okay. They're also going to help pay for private education, whether it's a religious education or not a religious education. So that's maybe going to help more private schools open and flourish, to give competition even in the private school market. Mm-hmm. They're attacking the problem from different ways. And the voucher system would also help homeschooling families. Like, okay, well, I don't need $5,000 to do homeschooling. Maybe $700. Oh my goodness, what could I do with that? It would give parents what they need. Or instead of just doing textbooks, like you said, if your child needs tutoring or if they need special services, instead of being required to dual enroll in the public district in order to get reading help, special, just extra helps that's, tutoring mm-hmm. that's available in the public district. One of your options right now is to dual enroll. But that does mean that some of your dollars, the dollars for your students, stay with the district. It's a minimum of 10% they're going to stay with the district if you dual enroll. Mm-hmm. If you are dual enrolled under option 5 with the homeschool assistance program, it's 30%.
Okay.
If you are dual enrolled with a high school student, it could actually be the full-time equivalency of a regular student.
And while you're on that with high school students, I also am aware of families that are dual enrolled in the Ames School District, and their high school students actually take classes at Iowa State and DMAC. which is then paid for through the Ames School District. Their per pupil dollars are just basically funneled through the Ames School District. And so they're dual enrolled, but they don't actually set foot for 1 minute of the school day in the Ames School building. So that's an option for families as well, students that are interested in getting college credit in through high school, to be able to expand and grow their learning in that way with getting college credit while they're in high school, and having that paid for with these education dollars.
Absolutely. And it's important to note that no matter what educational choice you access or what educational choice you choose for your child, even without dual enrolling, the law now requires you to be given access to parent-taught driver education, if there's a driver education program in the local school district, free annual standardized testing from a list approved by the Iowa Department of Education, and community college classes that you just talked about. You can have access to those things without dual enrolling. Oh. Dual enrolling actually adds an additional layer of benefit, giving you access to actual courses in the public school, like in person in the classroom, giving you access to extracurricular activities like clubs and sports and music, and giving you access to special education services, whether those be for special ed or English as a second language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I understand that, like, I have this on a sheet of paper all in front of me, but I've got a document here that keeps them separated. If you want to know what applies to option 1 and what can apply to option 1, it's there. If you want to know, okay, if I want to do option 4, what applies and what doesn't apply, so that I'm not trying to get you confused. There are a lot of terminologies involved in this, and I think that if you're interested in taking your child out of the current schooling option that you've done for a while, that it might benefit you just to look through and get an understanding of what are my options and what applies to what might work for our family.
Yeah. And you mentioned, as far as with charter schools, that you suspect, based on your learning about this, that there will be more charter schools with this bill passed, and with the high likelihood that this voucher system will also pass, that you suspect there will be more charter schools across the state. What are your thoughts about that locally?
I think that Ames is ripe for a charter school, not only in order to help students, provide an opportunity for students to succeed, mm-hmm. that they have in some ways been denied, but in addition to just the things going on in our community. Mm-hmm. We just had a school board election that was very contested. There were a lot of families unhappy with the direction, our family included, just with the direction of political ideology over academics. And when I entrust my child to a public school district, it's not to teach your ideology. Mm-hmm. It's to teach academics, mm-hmm. because I think that I spend a lot of dollars as a taxpayer mm-hmm. paying you to be good at what you do, to be a great educator, to know the best way to teach children. But when the school district is telling you that that's not your most important job, it's mm-hmm. not to care for a child, it's not to help them excel academically and be able to contribute to society when they graduate, I need to take some matters back into my own hands.
Mm-hmm. For your family and your child.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why my husband and I are exploring the possibility of spearheading a work for a charter school here in Ames. We understand that that's a lot of work. My background is in administration, and I'm very organized, detailed to a fault. Mm-hmm. My husband has the teaching experience and is just passionate about students. If you know him or anyone mm-hmm. who's
definitely
benefited by being his student, he's a passionate educator, and he's there for students, and would like to amass a team of teachers and other support staff that have the same passion to serve the students in Ames and in Story County. So if that is all of interest to you, I will just put out a shameless plug. Mm-hmm. We will have a link, Kira will have a link on the website to just a simple form that you can let us know what kind of interest you have in that, if you want to help us get the application ready to the Board of Education. If you are interested in teaching, administrating, support staff, volunteering, or if you're like, I know it's a ways down the road, but put my kid on the list, or I've got 3 kids that might be interested. Obviously, none of this is a commitment, but it would be just a gauge of how interested there are, if there are people interested who are in the community, and we'll look forward to being in touch that way.
Absolutely. Very cool. And so I think that it's important for us also to recognize that the topic of charter schools, the topic of vouchers, is controversial. And while we sit here and have discussed it, it's clear that we think that choices are a good thing for families, for children, and for education. I would hope that it would be seen that I'm not opposed to public schools. I have 3 children and they're all in a public school full time. I come from a family of educators. Both of my parents are retired public school educators, and I teach at a public university. So I am for public education. I'm for education, and I certainly don't want to encourage that. My goal is not to encourage harm to a public school. It's to encourage the best education that can be given for any child and meeting the needs of families. And I certainly, we wouldn't start a podcast on coming together for education in our community if we didn't think that we have great education in our community already that we want to continue to support. So of course we have great teachers in the Ames School District. I would never keep my children there if I didn't think that there were positive things as well. So while I have been very vocal about concerns, there are also very great things going on in our schools. So we are for all of these different options for families and wanting to be supportive as far as helping families to find the best fit for them. What have you seen as far as the controversy with charter schools and the voucher system? Have you heard specific grievances that people have about those options?
I think most of what I particularly get is just the lack of understanding about all the different concepts out there. Mm-hmm. Like it gets all jumbled together.
There are some arguments that are made against the voucher system. And one example that I've heard is Mike Baranek, if I said his name correctly. He is the president of the Iowa State Education Association, was quoted as saying that it is inconceivable that we would find a way to reduce funds from one of our most important economic engines in the state, even if there's just $5,000 pulled away from a school system. With the money that is sent to a voucher program, that's money that's being reduced from that school system. So some people see this as a way of harming our public schools. Is my understanding that the concern that they have with this. What are your thoughts on that? Do you hear a lot of concerns about the voucher system?
I think my response to that is that a monopoly is not good for anyone except the person who owns that company. A monopoly is not good for anyone, and competition is always a good thing. It's going to cause the public school to do better. To do better with their resources. And a charter school is going to have far fewer resources. A private school is going to have far fewer resources to work with. And if they're able to achieve higher results and more productive students who become citizens, I don't see that as a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The public school should need to compete with that.
So it's having another school in an area requires all educational options to become more competitive, and in doing so with education, it's producing better educational delivery methods and more individualized education, improving the education for each individual child. So with all of these options in mind, some of these things are time sensitive. What kinds of dates do parents need to be aware of?
Sure. That's why I wanted to talk about this as soon as possible, because we do have an open enrollment deadline of March 1st coming up. Again, remember that dual enrollment, open enrollment, enrollment in homeschool assistance program, those are all separate items that they can be combined, but they don't have to be. So March 1st would be the deadline by which a family would need to make an open enrollment decision. Another deadline is, I have no idea what's going to happen in this Black History Month. I know it was a really difficult time in our community last year when we did Black Lives Matter Week, and I just want to be proactive, and I hope it goes really well. I'm not wishing harm to students or teachers or districts at all. But if it doesn't go as well as we hope, and if what happens this month or something happens in your child's classroom or at your school that just says, we're done, we're not going to continue to subject our child to this, I want you to have no option. So you actually have the right to pull your child out one day to the next from a public school district. And the deadline is that you have 14 days to notify the school district of your new choice. So if your child had never been enrolled in a school district before, the requirements are different. But to most parents that we're talking to, they have a child enrolled, the most likely scenario, they pull them out of a public school district. Okay, now what do I have to do? And some people think I have to figure this all out before I can even take a step. I talked to a good friend who called and she thought she just had to figure out all the pieces. It's just not realistic. I couldn't force my kid to continue going to a situation that is not a good place or not safe or whatever you've decided is no longer the right fit for your child or your family. You just pull them out and you don't send them to school the next day. You have 14 days from removing your child from a public school or by September 1st, whichever is first, to notify the public school district where the child was enrolled and where the child lives, in case they're separate districts. That required notification method is determined by the choice you make. If you were to choose ISILDA option 1, which is independent private instruction, you actually just send an email to the registrar's office with some information, and that's detailed in here. It's just really basic what you're going to include. If you are choosing another option, you're going to use what's called Form A. Again, we have links to this on the Iowa Department of Education's website. Form A does require far more information. You have to submit Form A at least partially within 14 days, and you have 30 days to complete it fully. So you could pull your child out of school one day, and you've got 14 days to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And I would suggest that you spend not all of that time on what kind of curriculum are we looking at and what's the right school schedule for us. Study your child. Mm-hmm. What are the things by not doing the regular routine that you've been sending them to public school? What are the things that you notice in them? The pressures that they're no longer under, the things in their personality that start coming out that maybe were not able to be expressed, or where are the tears? What are the things that they miss? What are the classes that they just had that amazing teacher that maybe you want to look at some dual enrollment so that they can still be in that class? Mm-hmm. Maybe they've been looking forward to going to orchestra next year. Mm-hmm. Maybe you want to dual enroll so that you can do something like that. Mm-hmm. But spend a portion of those 14 days figuring out, what does your child need? How do they learn best? What does your family need? Mm-hmm. If it's going to look different for a family, you all can benefit, not just your child.
Yeah. Oh, so much good information. And so as we wrap up today, Heather, do you have any other tips or encouragement for parents, local families even, related to their child's education?
The best advice that I received before I started homeschooling, and I was in this scared place, was from a friend who actually was homeschooled all the way through and is now a successful, highly successful businessman in our community. And he just said to me, focus on the goal and not the tools. My fears were coming from all the decisions that had to be made and what curriculum and what's the schedule and this. What's the goal? Why do you want to homeschool your child? Why do you want them to have a different option for school? Why are you pursuing this differently? And if you can be motivated, figure out what that is and be motivated by that every day, even on the hard days, you're actually going to reach your goal. if you focus on the tools, and I found this curriculum online that I just like absolutely love and we have to do it. If it doesn't fit your kid, you really should set it to the side. Mm-hmm. But if you've got a goal, and I'm not a good goal setter, but if you have a goal and you can have that to motivate you every day, you're gonna achieve it, and you're gonna have successful kids.
That's awesome. And then some of the things that I just reflecting back that I wanted to highlight that you said is that might be different from year to year for your child, or from child to child. And so I love that what you're presenting today is we can be adaptable as families and parents for the needs of our child and with their education. So that's exciting, and these new options that are available. Well, Heather, thank you so much for all the information, and we just want to thank our listeners for joining us today. We encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe on our website to our news and our updates, and join the conversation. We want to hear your thoughts, because it's together that we build a thriving community in Ames and Central Iowa.